Imagine a missile streaking through the atmosphere, its warhead glowing with apocalyptic intent, aimed at the heart of America. A nuclear strike, the ultimate nightmare. Now imagine it failing, not because of luck, not because of diplomacy, but because the United States has spent decades building a fortress in the sky, under the sea, and across its borders that makes a successful nuclear attack nearly impossible. This isn't Hollywood bravado or patriotic chest-thumping. It's a cold, hard look at why the U.S. is the toughest target on the planet for a nuclear strike. Let's dive into the systems, strategies, and sheer audacity that make the United States a near impenetrable stronghold. First, let's address the elephant in the room. The threat is real. Russia has about 5,500 nuclear warheads, China around 500, North Korea maybe 50. Each could, in theory, target the U.S., but numbers don't tell the story. Launching a nuke isn't like firing a rifle. It's a complex, multi-stage gamble where every step is watched, countered, and potentially neutralized. The U.S. has spent over $700 billion since the Cold War on missile defense, early warning systems, and deterrence strategies. The result? A multi-layered shield that starts thousands of miles from American soil and ends with a counterpunch no adversary wants to face. The first layer is detection. The moment a missile launches, whether from a Siberian silo, a Chinese submarine, or a North Korean mobile launcher, the U.S. knows. Space-based infrared satellites, part of the Space Force's Overhead Persistent Infrared program, catch the heat signature of a rocket booster within seconds. These aren't your average weather satellites. They're purpose-built, orbiting 22,000 miles above Earth, scanning for the telltale flare of a missile launch. In 2025, the U.S. operates 12 such satellites, with more planned, feeding real-time data to command centers in Colorado and Virginia. A launch in Russia's Far East, detected in under 10 seconds. A submarine-launched missile in the Pacific? Same deal. The U.S. isn't just watching, it's staring, unblinking, with eyes that never sleep. But detection is just the start. Ground-based radars, like the massive Cobra Dane in Alaska and the sea-based X-band radar floating in the Pacific, track the missile's trajectory with precision down to meters. These systems don't just see the missile, they predict its path, speed, and target. If it's headed for the U.S., the data feeds into the ground-based Mid-Course Defense (GMD) system. 44 interceptors, based in Alaska and California, stand ready to launch. These aren't missiles that explode near their target. They're hit-to-kill vehicles, designed to slam into an incoming warhead at 15,000 miles per hour, obliterating it in a kinetic collision. Tests show a 55% success rate in ideal conditions, but the Pentagon's been clear. Even a partial hit disrupts a warhead's ability to detonate. And the U.S. is scaling up. By 2028, 64 interceptors will be online, with next-gen systems in development. Now, let's talk submarines. A nuclear-armed sub could, in theory, get close to U.S. shores and launch a surprise attack. But the U.S. Navy's anti-submarine warfare is a nightmare for adversaries. Virginia-class submarines, equipped with sonar arrays that can hear a fish sneeze, prowl the oceans. P-8 Poseidon aircraft drop sonobuoys that create underwater listening nets. And the sound surveillance system, SOSUS, a network of hydrophones on the ocean floor, tracks submarine movements across entire ocean basins. In 2023, a Chinese sub was detected off Guam before it could even arm its missiles. Embarrassing for Beijing, routine for the U.S. Navy. A rogue sub slipping through? Possible. but it'd need to evade a web of sensors that's been fine-tuned for 70 years. What about a stealth attack, like a nuke smuggled into a U.S. city? It's a movie plot favorite, but reality is less forgiving. The Department of Homeland Security's Radiation Detection Network, securing the cities, blankets major urban areas with sensors that can sniff out even trace amounts of nuclear material. Ports, highways, and airports are monitored 24/7. In 2024, a test run in Los Angeles caught a mock device within hours. Smuggling a nuke isn't impossible, but it's a logistical marathon, shielding radiation, evading inspections, and assembling a functional device under the nose of the FBI and NSA is a tall order. And if it's not a state actor, but a terrorist group, they'd need expertise and resources only a handful of nations possess. Good luck. Let's pause here. 700 words in. This is the first half of why a nuclear strike on the U.S. is a fantasy for adversaries. Detection, interception, and counterintelligence form a shield that's been battle-tested and refined for decades. But what happens if something gets through? What makes the U.S. not just defensible, but untouchable? That's where Part 2 comes in. The counter-strike, the strategy, and the global chess game that ensures no one dares pull the trigger. If a nuclear missile somehow beats the U.S.'s detection and interception systems, an unlikely feat, the story doesn't end with a mushroom cloud. It begins with retaliation so devastating, it's been called mutually assured destruction for a reason. The U.S. nuclear triad, land-based missiles, submarine-launched War Kelsey, and strategic bombers, isn't just a deterrent, it's a promise. Attack the U.S., and you won't survive the aftermath. This is the second reason the U.S. could never be nuked. No one can afford the consequences. The triad starts with 400 Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missiles, scattered across silos in Wyoming, Montana, and North Dakota. Each can deliver multiple warheads, up to 475 kilotons, to targets 8,000 miles away in under 30 minutes. They're buried in hardened silos that can withstand near-direct hits. Then there are the Ohio-class submarines, 14 of them, each carrying 20 Trident Sadu, 13 Trident missiles with up to 8 warheads apiece. These subs are virtually undetectable, roaming the Atlantic and Pacific, ready to launch from underwater. Finally, B-2 Spirit and B-52 bombers can deliver nuclear payloads from bases worldwide, cloaked by stealth or escorted by F-35s. In 2025, the U.S. has over 5,000 warheads, enough to end any nation's ambitions permanently. This triad isn't just firepower, it's psychology. Any nation launching a nuke knows the U.S. can respond with overwhelming force. In 2022, a declassified Pentagon report estimated that a full U.S. retaliatory strike could destroy 80% of an adversary's military infrastructure within hours. Russia's Putin knows this. China's Xi knows this. Even North Korea's Kim, for all his bluster, knows it. A single nuke on U.S. soil would trigger a response that erases the attacker's regime. And they know it. This isn't speculation. It's doctrine, drilled into every war game since the 1950s. But deterrence isn't just about retaliation. It's about making the first move suicidal. The U.S. has spent decades ensuring its enemies know an attack is a losing bet. Take NATO. An attack on the U.S. triggers Article 5, pulling 31 nations into the fight. In 2024, NATO's combined military spending hit $1.3 trillion, dwarfing any adversary. Add allies like Japan, South Korea, and Australia, and the Pacific becomes a fortress. China's growing navy, with 370 ships, is impressive, but outmatched by the U.S.'s 290 ships and 3.5 million tons of naval power, plus allied fleets. A nuclear first strike would unite this coalition, turning a single missile into a global war. Then there's the cyber dimension. A nuclear attack would likely be paired with cyber attacks to disrupt U.S. defenses. But the NSA and Cyber Command are steps ahead. In 2023, they thwarted a Russian attempt to hack U.S. missile defense networks, exposing vulnerabilities in Moscow's own systems. The U.S. spends $25 billion a year on cyber defense, with AI-driven systems that can detect and neutralize threats in milliseconds. A coordinated nuclear cyber attack would need to be perfect, and perfection is rare in war. What about hypersonic missiles, the new boogeyman? Russia and China claim hypersonics can evade U.S. defenses, but the U.S. is catching up fast. DARPA's hypersonic air-breathing weapon concept hit Mach 12 in 2024, and the Army's long-range hypersonic weapon is deploying in 2026. More importantly, hypersonics don't change the math. They're harder to intercept, but they don't negate the triad or NATO. A single successful strike might cause damage, but the counterstrike would be biblical. The final piece is geography. The U.S. is vast, 3.8 million square miles, 2 oceans, and friendly neighbors. Unlike smaller nations, it's not a single-target country. A nuclear attack would need hundreds of warheads to cripple it, and no nation has the capacity to deliver that without exposing itself to annihilation. Even a limited strike on, say, New York, would kill millions but leave the U.S. military intact, with bases in Guam, Diego Garcia, and Europe ready to respond. The U.S.'s dispersed infrastructure, political, military, economic, makes it uniquely resilient. This isn't to say the U.S. is invincible. A rogue nuke, a terrorist device, or a miscalculation could cause catastrophe. But nuked implies strategic defeat, and that's where the U.S. is untouchable. Its detection systems, interceptors, triad, allies, and sheer size create a web of redundancy no adversary can unravel. The cost of trying is extinction-level retaliation. That's why, in 2025, the U.S. remains the one nation no one dares nuke. Not out of fear, but logic. So, could it happen? A fluke, maybe? A deliberate, successful nuclear campaign to nuke the U.S.? Never. The systems are too tight, the stakes too high, the response too certain. The U.S. isn't just a nation. It's a fortress with 1,000 eyes and 1,000,000 fists, and every potential enemy knows it.